So we're going to start. Thank you guys for coming today. For those of you who have been to S3 before, thank you for coming back. For those of you who haven't been to S3 before, thank you for coming for your first time. My name is Stephen Holman. I run S3 here. I work in the Sustainability Innovation Program in the Bureau of Sustainability at the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. I've been here for about a year and a half, and I've been doing S3 for, this will be my second session, so about a year now. To give you guys a kind of a background on S3, S3 or the Sustainability Speaker Series is a speaker series put together by the Bureau of Sustainability that focuses on providing New Jersey residents, businesses, and organizations with kind of expertise through an educational forum on different experts' work in sustainability throughout the state of New Jersey. So we like to have people participate from any sector that we can kind of get them from. And then we put the presentations together so that we can have a kind of educational forum for everybody and an opportunity to network. So how this works is we do the presentations. At the very end of the presentations, we'll have a Q&A session. So throughout the presentation, if you have any questions or if you have any comments for speakers, feel free to put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A section, and we will get to them at the very end of the session. Today's event will be on government sustainability. So we'll be focusing on sustainability efforts taken up by different government agencies and community organizations, and we'll be focusing on general sustainability and decarbonization efforts that those organizations do. If you are also interested in other events that our Bureau does, we do a lot of other educational events or networking forums. We have a Wastewise network coming up on May 6th. So if you're interested in solid waste recycling, anything in that nature, please feel free to attend that event. You can either reach out to me if you have any questions about those events or anything that our Bureau does in general. We do a lot of work with sustainability for residents, organizations, and businesses, like I said earlier. And we put together a lot of different events. So if you want to contact me or go to our website at the DEP's website in the Bureau of Sustainability, you can sign up for our email listers, or you can go in there and just hit attend whenever we post new events. Yeah, so with that being said, we will start off with Steve Myers and Dan Clark from NJDEP's Bureau of Climate Change and Clean Energy, and they will be speaking about their work with the Levi Example Initiative. So Steve and Dan, feel free to take it away.
Stephen, thank you for the introduction and welcome to everybody in attendance. It's our pleasure to be here today to discuss DEP's first emissions inventory report. The report was published in October of 2024 in accordance with DEP Commissioner Latourette's July 2023 Leading by Example Administrative Order. The report quantifies greenhouse gas emissions for 5 years from 2018 through 2022 from 90 facilities and 14 vehicles that DEP operates, and it identifies our climate mitigation strategy and notes progress to date. Just to give a little bit of background on who we are, our Bureau is responsible for overseeing and tracking the emissions reduction goals established under the Global Warming Response Act, as well as supporting the development of clean energy technologies. Just to go through a couple of the reports here as listed on the screen. We issued our 80 by 50 progress report in 2020, most recent greenhouse gas inventory in 2024. We published a statewide ground source heat pump baseline study in 2023. And most recently, we published a solar setting analysis version 3.0 in the middle of 2024. Back to the, so DEP has been doing, leading by example, I'll say informally, internally for some time. However, the July 23 administrative order here formalized everything, and the goals of which were to reduce emissions, support the Global Warming Response Act, and adopt energy efficiency and clean energy technology to support the Clean Energy Act of 2018 and the 2019 Energy Master Plan. We'll be discussing the objectives and their status throughout today's presentation. However, I do want to note that the agency-wide steering committee includes our chief of staff, our agency's energy manager, our chief advisor for legal and regulatory affairs, and assistant commissioners from our Parks, Forest, and Historic Sites program, and our Fish and Wildlife program, as they are the two programs that oversee the majority of DEP facilities. And with that said, there's the beautiful cover of our report. And I'm going to hand it off to Dan. Dan, take it away.
Thank you, Steve. So you can see here, like Steve said, we published our first emissions inventory report in October of 2024, and we'll, at the end can share a link to that this is a public-facing document, and I'm just gonna let you know, right off the bat, this covers the years of 2018 to 2022, which are the 5 years that we had data for. Moving forward, we're planning on doing inventories for 2023 and 2024 once we have those data, and to make this a continuous process in the future. The mission, again, was to quantify DEP's emissions, primarily most of the Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. For those of you, who maybe know, Scope 1 emissions are those directly occurring on site, or that DEP would have generated those emissions, whereas Scope 2 emissions are things occurring off-site. So you can see that under Scope 1, for example, that's things like vehicle fuel use, fuels burned on site, or natural gas use on site, whereas Scope 2 emissions would be things like greenhouse gas emissions from the electricity that DEP buildings used, or district heat. We were able to cover most of those emissions, but there were some things that weren't quite included, like some of the hand tools and non-road vehicles, or some of the solid waste emissions and sewerage. So those are things that we'd like to cover in the future. Additionally, we'd like to get into quantifying some of those Scope 3 emissions from things like employee commuting. Just to give you an idea of what we're talking about in the universe of DEP facilities, DEP employs approximately 2,700 full-time employees and 1,300, the equivalent of 1,300 full-time hourly employees across the state at roughly 90 facilities and with about 1,400 vehicles. And, all of those are round figures that they change pretty regularly. So what that works out to, this was the 2022 emissions total, was the equivalent of 14,125 metric tons of carbon dioxide, which works out to about 3.5 metric tons per person. And you can see in this map on the left here, these are where all of DEP's facilities are located, and they're really all over the state. And when we talk about a facility, this can be an office building like DEP headquarters. This can be a state park or wildlife management area or a fish hatchery. So, it can mean a whole lot of different things. So the emissions at any facility are going to be very different. So these stacked bar charts here show the total emissions and the breakdown of those emissions for each year from 2018 to 2022. You can see that emissions peaked in 2019 and then dropped in 2020 and 2021. But yeah, we're creeping back up in 2022. So we think that this is likely a blip, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, but it's possible that the total emissions could be on a downward trajectory. New Jersey has pursued greenhouse gas reduction policies, and the emissions per unit of electricity have trended downward over time. In any year, you can see that electricity is the largest greenhouse gas emission source, followed by vehicle fueling, and then fuel oils like fuel oil 2 and LPG, as well as natural gas, with a little bit of emissions coming from district heat. This chart breaks down the 2022 emissions a little bit more in detail. So we really group everything pretty much into building emissions and vehicle emissions. And in any year, the building emissions are about 70% and vehicle emissions are about 30%, with those changing just a little bit year to year. And so electricity is 56% of the total, or of the building emissions, which is about 40% of the total. Again, followed by, natural gas and these fuel oils. And then you can see in the vehicle emissions graph on the right that most of our emissions come from gasoline vehicles. This gives you an idea of what the top 5 emitting facilities were in 2022. This is DEP headquarters at 401 East State Street in Trenton, followed by Liberty State Park, the Peak West Trout Hatchery, Ringwood State Park, and the 5 Station Plaza office building in Trenton. And this gives you a pretty good idea of the types of facilities that are owned, managed, used, and leased by DEP. That yes, we have these buildings that we have a lot of staff at, but we also have these, large parks with a lot of visitors. And, even though you have two parks here, Liberty and Ringwood are very, very different parks with different energy needs and emission sources. And then you also have the Peak West Trout Hatchery, which, again, different than pretty much anything else. When we think about vehicles, DEP has about 1,400 vehicles, and that number is always changing. The mileage that these vehicles get each year ranges from under 100 miles to over 20,000 miles a year. The oldest vehicle in the fleet is a C60 truck from 1977. And the fleet contains a range of, sedans and vans, emergency response vehicles, maintenance equipment, and other special equipment. So you can see some examples here. The data for these were all taken from odometer readings for this time period. So it's just, worth pointing out that these, vehicle emissions that are about 30% of the total DEP emissions really, have their source in a whole range of things. And on my next slide, I'll show you here, this is the breakdown of vehicles in May 2023. So you can see that of 1,400 vehicles, that the huge majority, about 1,150, were regular gasoline vehicles, and that at that time, about a tenth, 140, were diesel vehicles, with, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and electric vehicles. Steve will touch on this in a little bit, but there's, more electric vehicles have been added since May of 2023, and we're planning on adding more EVs. So looking at a breakdown of the EVs, this chart on the left breaks down the vehicle emissions based on the type. You can see that more emissions come from gas pickup trucks and larger, heavier vehicles because they, use more gas per mile, have more emissions per mile. This is also, to some extent due to the composition of our vehicle fleet that, maybe there's more of some of those heavier vehicles. And these categories here based on federal emissions classes is why this is a little funny that you have two types of SUV, for example. And you can then see on the right that, again, emissions from vehicles peaked in 2019 and really dipped in 2020 and 21, but appear to be going back up. Again, it's one of those things where it'll take a few more years of data to see if that was, just the pandemic or if there's, more of a downward or upward trend. So now that we've talked about the inventory, we're going to talk about steps we've taken to reach the goals in the administrative order to lower DEP's emissions. And I'm going to turn it back over to Steve. Steve?
Thanks, Dan. Now that Dan discussed quantification of our building and fleet emissions, then we're going to discuss our strategy and progress towards emissions reduction, which are depicted in this visual. As you can see, we're going to conduct energy audits, implement energy conservation measures identified in the energy audit report, transition our fleet to electric vehicles by 2035, install EV charging equipment to encourage fleet, workplace, and public charging, and lastly, to install enough solar PV to offset 100% of our electricity demand. The general theme here is electrification, building electrification, also referred to as building decarbonization, and vehicle electrification with solar to offset any electricity otherwise acquired from the grid. On the energy audit. So with respect to conducting energy audits, we're leveraging the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities free local government energy audit program, which government entities and 501c3 nonprofits can take advantage of. The audit is equivalent of an ASHRAE level 2 building audit and a ASHRAE level 3 lighting audit, and includes an inventory of all energy consuming equipment, detailed analysis of utility bills, facility benchmarking, and a screening for solar, EV charging stations, and combined heat and power. To date, energy audits are complete, partially complete, or in progress for 50 of our facilities, which is over half of them. And this map shows the 20 facilities with completed audits. The energy audit status of each of our facilities can also be found in Appendix B of our report, which I don't want to not mention because we're presenting on the report, and we can provide a link to that here at the end of the presentation. Next, on to the implementation of energy conservation measures. As mentioned, the report contains a list of potential energy conservation measures. This table represents the list of potential energy conservation measures for our 401 DP headquarters building. There's a lot of information on this table, so I'm not going to go through all of it, but I did want to just point out the last column, emissions reductions in pounds for each measure, as well as the adjacent column, simple payback period, as we're leveraging this information to prioritize our mitigation efforts. One thing I wanted to point out additionally is that this audit process is a one-for-one replacement. So if you wanted to, in other words, upgrade your fossil HVAC system to an electric heat pump system or electrify that system, you would need to do a higher level 3, or what's referred to as an investment grade audit. Holistically, we anticipate adding success stories to our Lead by Example website for those facilities that have done upgrades. However, in the interim, I can tell you that we've done lighting, HVAC, programmable thermostat upgrades at some of our fish and wildlife facilities. And as I mentioned, we've been doing energy efficiency, prior to the administrative order coming out in July of 2023. So, for example, we also have installed a few ground source heat pump systems at some of our facilities. There's one at Monmouth Battlefield State Park, 2 at Badstow Historic Village, which I actually happened to learn from a prior S3 meeting a year or 2 ago, and at the Forest Resource Education Center, with 1 additional ground source heat pump system teed up for Holly Farms. On to our fleet electrification. As Dan had mentioned, we have 1,400 vehicles in our department. 490 of them are light-duty non-emergency vehicles. 76 of them are battery electric or plug-in hybrids. And we're happy to say that we have 50 vehicles on order. And this map on the right shows, where those vehicles are going to be stationed out of once we acquire them. On to EV charging infrastructure. We have employee EV chargers at Trenton. The top left visual there is a picture of the back of our parking lot at DP 401 headquarters. We also have fleet EV chargers in Trenton, Ewing, and at Liberty State Park. These 2 bottom visuals are examples of some of the stations that our fleet is leveraging. And additionally, we have 10 level 2 EV chargers at public destinations, Cheesequake, High Point, Round Valley, Wawayanda, and Badstow. And Badstow is the one in the top right corner there. And then last but not least, with respect to solar, again, our goal is to offset 100% of our electricity demand with solar. DEP did install a 184 kilowatt solar array on the roof of our Trenton headquarters back in 2012. Otherwise, our building rooftop options are restricted due to shading or their historic nature. Installation of solar arrays at state agencies have been formalized through a solar power purchase agreement issued by the State Department of Treasury as they handle procurement. We've been analyzing our parking lots for hosting solar canopies. During this process, we came to realize that where we have parking lot space, we don't have electric demand, and where we have electric demand, we don't necessarily have the space. So that's definitely one of the challenges that we've been up against. But fortunately, the Board of Public Utilities recently just approved a remote net metering program that will allow government entities to aggregate demand from multiple facilities via one solar array, as long as that array is within the same service territory. So it's sort of like community solar, if you're familiar with that, and that, you know, the DEP or any government entity for that matter in New Jersey could construct a solar array and bring in, you know, demand from multiple locations, not just at that location that's hosting the array. And additionally, this new remote net metering law allows and program allows for arrays to be sited off-site if a government entity does not have any space on site. So we're really looking forward to taking advantage of that program here in the near term. So additionally, we're in the process of, you know, now that we know this new remote net metering program is an option, you know, we've pivoted from looking at each of our sites individually to trying to figure out where we could, you know, have larger arrays in parking lots. And obviously, because we are the DEP, we have a lot of, you know, our properties, open space, historic sites. So, you know, we have some challenges that other New Jersey state agencies do not. So we're working through that, and we're anticipating going out to bid to have some phase 1 environmental assessments done at a few of these locations in the near term. And then last slide here, just to kind of give you circling back on the administrative order where things stand. You know, we've come so far. It's amazing. This order got the AO was issued in July of 2023, and a year and a half later, I don't know that any of us would have thought we were this far along, but we've had great success and collaboration from top to bottom, from staff at the field all the way up to obviously the steering committee members to make sure that you know, the goals and objectives of this administrative order you know, are implemented and succeed. Just to give you a sense of a couple of the things on the right here as far as progress, identifying utility meters serving each building. We've geolocated 90% of our electric meters, which is almost, we have almost 600 electric meters, and 80% of our gas meters. So that's been a huge undertaking. That's going to help us understand, you know, we know the universe of our buildings, but we don't necessarily know the universe of our buildings with energy demand. So, so we're leveraging, you know, geolocation of meters to kind of have a better understanding of you know, which buildings are connected to which meters. And obviously sometimes you can have, you know, a meter is connected to multiple buildings via underground conduit, etc. And then there's scenarios where, you know, a building may have multiple electric meters, like our large 401 headquarters building. And then last but not least, we're collaborating with our colleagues at the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities to develop a strategic energy management plan specifically to identify funding options for implementing these energy conservation measures. As Dan elaborated on the uniqueness of our buildings, and to beyond that, right? We have buildings that we own and occupy. We have buildings that we own and lease, and then we have buildings that we occupy that we're leasing from someone else. So, you know, there's many different scenarios, and depending on who the owner of that building is, there's a different, you know, financing incentive that we'll have to follow. So with that, I guess the last slide there is your QR code. So if you want to take a screenshot of that at some point later on, obviously we'll have the link provided in the PowerPoint, and the presentation will be available on the S3 website down the road. So back to you, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Dan, for presenting, being so informative. Just as an update, our Q&A button at the top seems to not be working right now for some reason. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the regular chat, or feel free to wait until the end of the presentation today, and then we can get to your question during the Q&A session. But with that being said, we will transition now from a more government-focused decarbonization sustainability efforts and get into some community work. So we will have Lauren Skowronski from Sustainable Jersey speaking on the Sustainable Jersey Regional Hubs. So Lauren, feel free to take it away.
Great. Thanks so much. And hi, everybody. I'm Lauren. For those of you who don't know me, I am the Assistant Director at Sustainable Jersey. I wear many hats. I work on development. I sort of am the lead for our health initiatives, our public health initiatives, and our public engagement and information, which deals with, how can government be more open and transparent and create infrastructure for public engagement and communications. And also, I help to facilitate our regional hubs around the state. So when I came on board about 11 years ago, there was a lot of conversation amongst the local groups that were doing the work of Sustainable Jersey, and they wanted to know, what are other towns doing? And so we thought, maybe it's time to start putting together some regional hubs. I recognize I should back up. For those of you who aren't familiar with Sustainable Jersey, we are a nonprofit. We're based out of the College of New Jersey. We work statewide across New Jersey with local communities, developing with our partners such as DEP, the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities, Economic Development Authority, many state agencies, academic partners, nonprofit partners. We work to develop best practices and solutions to the critical issues that local communities are facing. So best practices that municipalities and schools can implement in order to become sustainable. And what a community needs to do when they engage and participate in Sustainable Jersey is to create what we call a green team. On the ground, they can call it whatever they want, but internally we call them green teams. They are actually appointed by the mayor and council on the municipal side. So they're sort of quasi-governmental entities, and they're responsible for implementing the actions and the best practices that I was just mentioning before in their communities. And so, in order to help regional hubs, in order to help green teams to network with each other, learn from each other, what's working in your community that I could bring back into mine, receive sort of training on different areas of interest, and just, build that sort of knowledge base of, other green teams that they can partner with and collaborate with in projects. We developed the Regional Hub program. And so beyond, the value of the networking and the learning, we really want to try to see collaborative projects so that, the impact of these projects that communities are working on can have more of a regional impact. So the regional hubs have been in existence for almost about 10 years. We started piloting with a few: Mercer County, Atlantic, Cape May, the Tri-County, which is Burlington, Camden, and Gloucester, and also Essex. Those were our first pilot hubs, and you can see how it's grown since. We have about 10 now, spanning, the whole length of the state, with the exception of, maybe the deep south and the far north. But I will say that Warren is coming on board. There is some interest from the County Environmental Commission in sort of pulling together the local communities to create a hub and to, connect those towns, which is really important in a rural county like Warren, so that, communities aren't feeling that they're working in silos and, can have a larger impact on the projects that they're working on. So I just wanted to share some of these collaborative projects that the hubs have been working on for a number of years, starting with energy efficiency outreach campaigns. And so both Mercer and Essex, Essex is still going on. Mercer, took place a couple of years ago, and basically there's a number of towns that sort of came together to develop marketing materials so that they could better provide outreach to residents and businesses within their community about the various different efficiency programs at the state and the utility level. So, energy audits, what Stephen was talking about before, and how the towns can do this on their own facilities, but also how the commercial facilities across their communities and the residents can also do, home energy audit. Different programs are to, implement the outcomes of those audits and make their homes more energy efficient, make their businesses more energy efficient. And so these images here are from Essex. And you can see that, they created a street banner, which is hanging up on, I think this is Irvington. This is on the right side. And so, they would take turns sort of, each town gets a couple of weeks to have this in their, downtown area, and then they, rotate it around. And then they had various different flyers and marketing materials as well to, market this effort. And it's been pretty successful. There have been multi-town collaborative efforts for renewable energy government aggregation. Sorry, that's actually misspelled there. It should be renewable government energy aggregation, RGEA. And what that is basically, a town has the ability to group purchase energy for its residents. So that's energy aggregation, government energy aggregation. And what Sustainable Jersey is pushing is to do that, but with a higher renewable content than what is required by law. So in essence, this is a really great way to lower a community carbon footprint, because residents just automatically have their energy purchased at a lower rate because it's being group purchased, and then at a higher renewable content than what they're currently being provided by, their utilities, because most people just sign up with their utility program and they're getting whatever the utility is giving them. So the government, gets to sort of shop around. They hire a consultant, they shop around and find, a better energy source that can go at a higher renewable content. And so in Essex County and Monmouth County hubs, multiple towns got together to say, let's make this an even bigger group purchase and band together. In Essex, it's about 7 towns now, and in Monmouth there were 6. Both projects are on pause because of the market. As of the past couple of years, the renewable energy content was not saving. There basically was not enough cost savings to make this effort worthwhile. So they sort of hit pause and are sort of waiting for, the market to shift. But it's a really great way, again, to have a direct impact, a big impact on lowering a community carbon footprint. And then by banding with multiple towns, you're able to get an even lower group rate. And then some other collaborative efforts across the hubs in Bergen County and Hunterdon County. Creative teams have been established at the county level. So one of the actions of Sustainable Jersey is to establish a creative team, and that creative team is supposed to look at all the different assets, the creative assets that a town has, and then work to promote them and advance them in various different ways. And so rather than these two hubs thought, rather than every town having their own creative team, let's put one together. And so Hunterdon, they created a really beautiful website for the Hunterdon County Green Team creative team, and they put an asset inventory together with a beautiful map and pictures. If you clicked on the map to see in Flemington, this different artist or gallery exists, and they give a little blurb about it. And over in Frenchtown, here are some of the creative assets. And so they really wanted to highlight as a way to try to bring people into the county and into these towns, all the different, interesting art and historic, sites that they've got there. So some of the hubs, mainly the Tri-County hub, which is down in Burlington, Camden, and Gloucester, they do mentoring. So there's, but I call out the Tri-County hub because they really have like an advanced program where they've, built a little bit of a structure to it, and they have, folks who have been involved in their green teams for a while and have been successful in getting certification at the within Sustainable Jersey. They have them signing up to be mentors, and then as new towns come into the fold and say that they want to get involved in the Sustainable Jersey program, but they're having trouble getting certification, or there's no political will to move this forward, they sort of match up the mentors to work with those struggling green teams. Maybe there are green teams that are at the bronze certification level in the Sustainable Jersey program, but want to get to silver and are just sort of struggling. That's another role for a mentor. And so some of the other hubs just have more of an ad hoc kind of mentor program, but it's a really wonderful way to just sort of get your colleagues in there. Sustainable Jersey, we've got a lot of staff, and we provide a ton of technical assistance and help. We even provide grants and financial support for communities to advance their sustainability projects. But I think when it comes from another town in your region to say, here's how we did it, this is how it's working for us, and here are some tips and tricks, it can be a little bit more helpful for communities, especially when they're of the same size or the same political makeup, that kind of thing. Single-use plastics has been a really hot topic over the past, I'd say decade, really. And Atlantic Cape May hub really was on the cutting edge there. This is way before the state law was adopted to ban the plastic bags. The Down Beach Green Team, which is down in Atlantic County, comprised of a few different towns, Ventnor, Margate, Longport, they passed a plastic bag fee. They were the first ordinance adopted at the local level, and it really picked up steam throughout that hub. They just sort of started working on campaigns to get more of the towns to pass bans instead of fees, and then we had them talk to other hubs, and then started spreading in those other hubs. And before you knew it, we had a statewide movement and a state law passed. Similarly, with polystyrene, or some people know it better as styrofoam, Bergen County has been having a really successful campaign at their hub with education campaigns on the health hazards and environmental impacts of styrofoam. They've been doing county-wide recycling drives. So, various different towns host different, host recycling drives. And they even more recently got some money from the county utility authority to purchase a densifier, and it's housed in Ridgefield Park, to be used by all of the different towns across the county, specifically the regional hub members, so that they can, feed the styrofoam that they collect in the drives into this machine, and it densifies, takes all the air out and compacts it down into like basically a brick that they can then bring to be recycled and make money as well. So it's a really successful project, collaborative project. Down in Atlantic Cape May, there was an effort to create a new watershed association, because they were looking at, okay, we've got the Mullica River, the mouth of it is right here in our county, in Atlantic County, and there's 8 towns here that are impacted, and touch the mouth of this river, but there's no watershed association here for us. It's more upstream, so they developed their own and have been doing work related to that. There's also, across the hubs, across the past 10 years or so, there's been multi-town education campaigns for recycling to get people, especially when the market, China stopped taking our materials and the market sort of crashed. There was an effort to try to build compliance for the rules that are out there across the many municipalities in New Jersey. Everybody's sort of doing recycling in a different way. So trying to build a more regional, coordinated effort on what materials are taken, and then doing education campaigns has been a big push. Storm management efforts, lots of different public events that the hubs do, film screenings on important topics. And Monmouth County had been working on a Buy Fresh, Buy Local campaign to, coordinate with their Grown in Monmouth campaign at the county level. Mercer County had been doing for a number of years a countywide green fair, again, in an effort to, instead having, every different town doing green fairs and pulling from the same pool of vendors and nonprofits to come and table, why don't we just do a county-wide one? And it had been really successful, well over 1,000 people attending every year, but they've sort of gone on hiatus now. Some additional efforts, there's been, various different public events hosted by multiple hubs together. So the down south, the Tri-County and the Atlantic Cape May hubs have done events together. We try to bring the hubs together statewide, for Zooms fairly regularly to, do trainings on various different topics that we know are hot. And also, get them talking to each other. Again, same purpose as the regional hubs, but on a statewide level, what's working in your hub that we can do in our hub, that kind of thing. Back during COVID, there was a cross-hub committee that wanted to address, how green teams were impacted by COVID and how the green teams could be helped. A lot of them, just sort of went on hiatus and had lack of capacity to do things. So they wanted to try to come up with some guidance for that. And so if you want more information, you can find, contact information for the various different hubs. You can go to our website. Here's the path of how to get there and also the direct link. And I believe Stephen will be sharing our presentations with folks after this. And so you'll be able to, follow that link and get more information.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lauren. Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of questions coming, especially for you, Lauren. So I'm sure we'll be able to get to some of those at the very end. So with that being said, again, thank you for speaking. And now we'll transition from a kind of larger regional hub to a kind of smaller collaborative effort with Peter Freed from the Madison Green Team, who will be speaking on the decarbonization efforts going on in Madison. So Peter, please feel free to take it away.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. I trust people can see me. With that, I will try to share my slides. And go here, Windows, there. Can people see my PowerPoint at this point? My PowerPoint in view? Yes?
We can see it, Peter.
I'm going to go to screen share. Now you should see my first slide. Yep. As Steve mentioned, my name is Peter Freed. I'm a member, volunteer member of the Sustainable Madison Advisory Committee and of our Climate Action Committee here in Madison, where I've lived for 45 years. And an email link is at the bottom, which we urge people to use to find out details about the list of things that I'll be talking about. I want to echo Lauren's message on collaboration. We appreciate the opportunity to talk to people because we've found that those things that we pursue with other towns are usually the most successful and the most powerful initiatives. Please, as I go through a long litany of different things, use the email to get back to us for inquiries. So with that, I'll go to my next slide. To provide some context regarding Madison, we are about 28 miles due west of Times Square, and population is between 16 and 17,000 in a year, and we are what's a suburban bedroom community right on the New Jersey Transit line. So we're typical in that regard of many towns, especially the northern half of New Jersey. But there's several unique features about Madison. We urge people to visit Madison and see some of our uniqueness. But for this briefing, there are two universities in town, Drew University and Fairleigh Dickinson, and they color our demographics in town in a good way. Another very important thing that is unique about Madison, it's one of 8 or 9 towns in New Jersey that have their own electric utility. That utility buys wholesale power off the PJM grid by power purchase contracts, and our utility owns and manages and maintains the distribution grid within town. I point this out because this is an asset because it makes our utility very responsive to things we want to try. We can do a lot of interesting things because of it. On the other side of the ledger, there's sometimes where we find we don't have the engineering or computing assets that a large utility like PSE&G might have. So there's a plus and a minus from having your own electric utility. And the finally very important thing that I want to point out is that where the things we get done in Madison are because we have a very supportive town administration, a very supportive mayor, and a very supportive governing body. They provide support for multiple green teams in town, an environmental commission, the sustainability committee that I mentioned, a climate action committee, and a shade tree management board. So that gives you some context about the town. Let me go to the next slide here. Please don't worry, I am not going to go through all these different items, but I wanted to provide a table of contents for the various decarbonizing or electrifying initiatives that we've pursued over the last several years. They're grouped here in terms of sort of a traditional grouping. The first large area is promoting EV growth among our entire population, then greening the municipal fleet, getting EVs and hybrids into the municipal fleet, then the topic of what are we doing about electrifying our municipal buildings, and moving over to the right side, what are we doing about energy efficiency and electrification on all the other buildings in town. Finally, I mentioned renewable energy, where there are some initiatives that we could talk about if we had time, and various resiliency and sustainability efforts dealing with the tree canopy and stormwater management and those kinds of things. And the last one on the list is probably the most important, and I'll get to that at the end. The items in green on this chart are the things that I will talk about some more. If I have some time at the end, I'll talk about greening the municipal fleet because Steve mentioned that might be of interest to some people here. There are slides in the backup section of this deck dealing with all the things here that are the major topics that are in black. So this will just give you the list of things that if you're interested in talking to me or someone about more, you can get on the email link. Let's talk first about electrifying municipal buildings. Stephen, earlier you heard about the local government energy audits. We did these in 2020 for 5 of our largest municipal buildings, and they provided us a baseline for the various things we could do for energy efficiency improvement. And we've been using those as we gradually make modifications to those buildings. Last year, we began two major initiatives to electrify or partially electrify two quite old historic buildings. You see them on the left. The first is our town hall, built in 1933 with a gift from Geraldine Rockefeller Dodge. And it is a town hall that is quite grand in stature. I joke that it is somewhere between the U.S. Capitol and the Supreme Court in appearance. The renovation is in progress on the eastern part of that building, which I believe is the left side in this picture. And we, using a BPU Community Energy Program implementation grant, and other funding, the renovation is proceeding, and we are installing heat pumps in the lower part of that building to do the heating and cooling electrically and decrease the gas usage in that building. So the topic of electrifying old historic buildings is relevant in a lot of New Jersey. And so we're very proud of both of these initiatives. The second one is an even older building. It's called the Masonic Lodge in Madison. It was actually originally built 200 years ago as a Presbyterian church, and then was a Masonic Lodge, and then was bought by the town to become a senior center for the town. And it is undergoing right now essentially a gut renovation, which will leave it with an entirely electric heating, cooling, and water heating system. And that also was supported by another community energy program implementation grant. On the bottom, you see that we track the gas consumption in all our major buildings. The Masonic Lodge is not on that list because it was newly added. And we track that every year. And you also see the long road ahead of us to get to 2050, where we have put a goal which basically matches the goals set in the state energy master plan, the 2019 or 2020, I forget what it's called, energy master plan. And so our objective is in our municipal buildings to decrease our gas usage according to that. One thing we found is that as grant opportunities come along, often a grant opportunity will come along and you will not have a plan in place, or you'll not know what the detailed plan is to do electrification of a building, and you won't be able to take advantage of the grant because there's a time window on those things. So what we're doing next, and what the town is putting money to, is detailing electrification plans for the remaining municipal buildings so that we will be ready when funding opportunities come along. And I think that's an important thing to mention. We've often found ourselves where some money is available for a grant, and we've said, what are we going to do with that? And we said, well, we don't have a detailed plan for this building, therefore we can't, write estimates and do that kind of stuff. We want to remedy that by putting together the plans for long-range electrification of the rest of our buildings. One particular project that we're very proud of is just going through construction right now. And it is that Madison will have the first 100% affordable family housing complex that will be Passive House certified in New Jersey. You see a picture of what it will look like on the upper right, the groundbreaking on the lower right. where Congresswoman Cheryl is on the right, our mayor is in the middle somewhere, and the council and other people are going through the groundbreaking there. It'll result in 44 units of affordable family housing. There are 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, and I believe also 3-bedroom units in this complex. It is all passive house and zero energy ready certified. And you see some of the features listed there that result in that. I'll just talk about one, which was a real sort of a coup that we arranged to get rooftop solar generation on this housing complex with the rooftop solar basically linked to the apartment, net metered to the apartments, to the individual apartments. This took a good deal of negotiation with the developer, and but we made it come out advantageous for the renters, for the developer. And so you will see in the picture on the right, you'll see various solar arrays on the rooftops. This was a partnership between private development and government funding. You'll see on the bottom bullet all the different funding sources and agencies that came together. As Representative Congresswoman Cheryl said just a few days ago, this was a real triumph for our mayor, among others, who basically negotiated all these different parties to come together and create the funding for this building, for this project. So we're very proud in Madison of that. Willing to talk to people about it some more if you send me inquiries. A larger impact to our total decarbonization would be electrification and energy efficiency in all our homes, and not just homes, but also commercial buildings. You see on the bottom that we track that as well and have a similar long-range plan to get to 2050 for that gas usage. Madison has essentially no or a negligible amount of heating oil. All the heating in Madison has been done with methane from PSE&G. Some of the things that we as a town have implemented to motivate home electrification and efficiency are listed on the right. We have subsidized home energy audits from 2017 till today and continuing. These are audits where a company will come into town and typically charge you $250 to do an energy audit, but in Madison they charge you $50 because the town subsidizes that. The company then tells you the different options you have to do energy improvements in your home. We have done an active outreach campaign with information hubs on the borough. Where's my cursor? There's the cursor. To provide information hubs for EVs, for home energy, and for solar energy on the borough web. The QR code in the middle of the slide will link you to that. This year, or last year, we started providing rebates from our electric utility for people who want to use, convert their houses to heating with heat pumps and installing home EV chargers. You see some of the rebate levels on the right of the chart. This is basically a program because we have our own utility. We do not get the JCP&L or PSE&G rebates for those things, so the town created a matching program to those. We are probably the only small town in New Jersey that is 100% smart meter installed. There are about 6,000 electric meters in town, between 6,000 and 7,000, I believe. And they are, we have basically now 15-minute time resolution on the electric consumption for all of those accounts. This coming year, we will be implementing time of use electric rates. to try to push down our demand requirements on hot days, for instance. We're doing it as a pilot program in 2025. And if that pilot program proves successful there, we will be making it more widespread throughout town. We've implemented a local benchmarking tool so people can basically see how their annual electric consumption compares with their neighbors. And it's very similar to what PSE&G provides with regard to benchmarking your natural gas consumption. Our big challenge that we're looking at right now is, since Madison is a very popular place for new development of townhouses and apartment complexes, how can we encourage, motivate, I won't use the word force, but encourage and motivate developers to include energy efficiency and renewables in their building plans. On the next chart, I'm talking more in general about decarbonization initiatives in Madison in general. Last year, for the 5th year in a row, Madison was recognized by Sustainable Jersey as the #1 mid-sized town in New Jersey for sustainability scores. As you've seen, our decarbonization goal is to match the New Jersey state goal of 80% reduction by 2050. At least that's the current goal. We've heard rumors that those goals are the bar is going to be moved, but we'll see. On the right, you see our carbon footprint, which we track every year for the whole town. The tiny yellow line on top is the heating oil contribution. The big gray contribution is vehicles. The small orange contribution is from electricity, and the blue is from the methane or natural gas consumption in town. So this is our scope 1 and scope 2 carbon footprint. You can see the dip in 2020 due to COVID, a small dip in 2023, which I would like to say is due to our decarbonization efforts, but a lot of it might be due to a warm winter, and not this winter, but the previous one, and to models that change with regard to how we estimate vehicle emissions at a municipal level. To continue to work on this carbon footprint and to drive down toward the 2050 goal, our Borough Council has instituted an annual recurring climate action process, which is managed by the Climate Action Committee to achieve the various bullets you see there toward electrification and emission reduction. The process here is very important. It leads me to the final slide in the briefing, which is on the next one. And it basically shows you what happens each year in Madison. Early in the year, right now, we go through our measurement cycle where we get all our data. We see what our carbon footprint looks like. We look what our emissions, what our EV counts, what our municipal fleet is doing. We assess these against quantitative goals that we've set. We brief the council on where we are. We work then with staff and administration. Where's the cursor? Come on, cursor, there you are. To come up with adjusted actions and new actions to work on each item. We go back to council, especially for items where they require budgetary authority. We get votes on that, and we go back and we modify our climate actions, which go on continuously. But we go through this process every year. It is a process that is linked to the borough's budget process. And we think the process is the important thing here because it gives some persistence to our climate action planning. And it means we're going to keep on doing this, or I won't be here, but we hope we will continue to do this all the way through 2050. And that, I think, might be one of the most important things about what we've done in decarbonization in Madison. And it is my last slide. Again, here is an email link. We urge people to inquire about any of these many things that I've listed very quickly. With that, I'll turn it back to Steve. Let me see if I can unshare. Steve can take. You took control. Good.
Yep. Thank you, Peter. All right. So before we get into the Q&A section, I'd just like to kind of go over. We know a lot of people are very interested in climate change sustainability efforts. So we will be continuing to do efforts such as this to communicate with the public and engage everybody in efforts that we're doing. And we hope to keep that as a kind of groundwork for the work that we will be putting out in the future. So if you have any questions about sustainability or climate change or are looking to get involved in something, please feel free to reach out to me. I will try to get you the correct information and also try to get you in contact with anybody that I can or provide you with information to get you in contact with people that will be working on those efforts. With that being said, we'll open up the floor for Q&A, so feel free to put questions in the chat. We've been looking through the chat to see questions and comments already. If we can't get to any, please feel free to contact me with your questions. And now I will go over to Robin Heston-Murphy, who will be answering or providing any of the questions to the speakers that we didn't get a chance to get to, and hopefully we can answer everything before we have to leave today.
Thanks, Stephen. Like Stephen said, go ahead and type your messages, your questions into the chat. And Peter, we have a couple questions for you. One of the ones came in, I'm not sure at what point this question was asked, but they said, how much of this comes from waste to energy, if at all? And you are muted.
Yeah. I think I'm unmuted now. How much of it comes from what?
Waste to energy. So burning, like resource recovery facilities where they burn waste and recover energy from it.
We are currently not burning any of our waste or turning it into energy through that kind of generation. We have a very active recycling program, which probably could have been on the charts, but wasn't. And so I think the answer to the question is 0.
Okay. Another question for you, Peter, is, and I think you covered this at one point, but what were the incentives offered to residents for installing heat pumps or home charging stations?
Okay, they were essentially listed on the slide. We designed the program essentially to match the benefits that a JCP&L customer in a different town would get for the same kind of installations. We basically did this because we don't have the resources to figure out a better answer than what they are providing for their customers. So we just went ahead and essentially matched those benefits. I think there are numbers between $600 and $1,000 for various types of equipment that can be installed. They are listed on the slide, and I can provide more details with an email correspondence if someone wishes.
Okay, thank you. Lauren, there was one, you answered pretty much all of the questions that were asked of you in the chat, but there was one that I don't think you answered, but I think you covered this during your presentation, but if you could just remind people, they asked, how do we connect with the regional hubs? And this person specifically said they're in Howe in Monmouth County.
Okay, great. So some of the, I should have mentioned this, that the regional hubs are all sort of at different levels of engagement, including the leadership. Some of the hubs have leadership, and you'll see contact info on the Sustainable Jersey website with the link that I provided in the chat. I could drop it there again. But for some hubs, including the Monmouth hub, I would be the point person there. So I will say that, you know, COVID did do a number on the hubs, you know, people just sort of for a while just stopped participating, or were focusing specifically on, you know, their local communities. And so the regional level just sort of took a back seat. And so some of the hubs are still getting going, and Monmouth being one of them. So they're, you can, I will put my contact info in the chat, and you can reach out to me, and I will make sure that you're on the list so that the next meeting that gets scheduled, you're involved, and, you know, I can connect you with everyone.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. Peter, there's another question for you. They asked about Passive House, and how will the families be recruited and selected for the Passive House Affordable Family Housing Project? And you are muted.
I just typed an answer saying, I don't know, but I'm willing to find out. And if somebody sends me email correspondence, I will get them an answer.
Okay. Yes, now I see that you did reply. Sorry about that. And most of the remaining things in the chat are comments from people rather than actual questions. One comment had to do with partnering with colleges and universities, because they are also working on sustainability. And actually, there was a question in this comment asking if, do you draw data from colleges and universities or consider ways to collaborate? And that could be for any of the speakers.
Okay. We have faculty members from Drew who participate on our committees, members of the Environmental Commission and Sustainable Madison, environmental science professor at Drew, gives us that link. Yeah, we seek to collaborate. We draw data just because we have access to all the electric and gas consumption data, so we have that information. Other than that, have not drawn a lot of data, but we're always, always working on collaboration with them.
Yeah, I would just add that we'd be interested in talking to that individual to understand more about what they're doing and how we may be able to collaborate for sure.
Okay.
That's an answer really quick.
Yeah, on that note, to kind of back up what Steve said, if anybody has any information on college or university data they'd like to send us, feel free to send it to me or to Steve, because we would both be very interested in working on that.
And since the chat wasn't really working in the beginning, I added Stephen's email address into the chat, and I'll also add our Bureau of Sustainability webpage into the chat, just in case you didn't see it at the top of the chat. There is a question for Steve and Dan. The question is, did DEP look at using telematics to automate the vehicle data collection?
Steve, if you don't mind.
So that's something that the State Department of Treasury is tackling. So
yeah,
the answer is yes.
So, and I mean, some of that too, we don't always, just because the state has something, it doesn't necessarily mean we can get access to it for, all sorts of reasons, and, privacy, safety concerns, so on and so forth, or that we can get it in real time. So, we're always working on improving our estimates based on every tool available to us.
Go ahead, Peter.
One thing that has happened in Madison is we do the fleet inventory every year for Sustainable Jersey, but it's part of our carbon footprint, of course, where we inventory the mileage and fuel consumption of each vehicle. We have about 110 vehicles in a municipal fleet. And a year ago, they bought a new fueling software, a new set of software for the fuel pump, where all the municipal vehicles fuel at this one pump, which is convenient. And the software basically provides me almost automatically with all the data I need for a fleet inventory. So I get the mileage for each vehicle for a year. I get the fuel consumption for each vehicle for a year. And it has greatly shortened the process of doing a fleet inventory, which is basically what we're talking about tracking. It's just an option that is maybe useful for some towns and less expensive than telematics, perhaps.
If I could add too, I mean, so one of the things in our inventory process, we were inventorying only emissions from DEP, and there are, some in that process. Some of what we found out is that there are certain areas that are tracked at the state level and not super easy to disaggregate to DEP in terms of our emissions reporting. And so for some of those, as we've moved through this process, the end goal is that we would like to be able to replicate this for all state agencies, and that some of those things might be easier to see at the state level than at the agency level, in terms of emissions generating activities. So, that's also something that as we think about this going forward, that, those things are being counted somewhere. It's just a matter of exactly where and what you're looking at.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Feel free to, we have a few more minutes, so if you want to add any more questions into the chat, please feel free to do so.
Stephen, I'll let it be your call if you'd like me to talk about the municipal fleet. I can do it or not.
Give me 1 second.
You
Also,
I
I was just going to, hold on a second, Peter. I was just going to say, we don't have the ability in this forum to unmute anyone so that you can, so raising your hand isn't going to work. You have to put your comments into the chat. So just type any comments into the chat. Go ahead, Peter.
Stephen, do you want me to go through some more slides or not?
We actually just got another question. Someone was asking about the name of the software for the municipal fleet. So if you guys have any answers for that, feel free to answer that really quick.
I can get versions and details, but it's something called Fuel Force. And I can get specifics.
While Peter's looking that up, Dan and Steve, someone asked if DEP considered using digital twin modeling and automated decarbonization tools to gain insights quickly.
So that would be no. We've been leveraging, the resources that are available to us, and that's why I mentioned that those audits are free through the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities. So I'd be interested if the commenter wants to provide some resources so we could review what those are. Definitely.
Okay, and just so everybody knows, Peter did put into the chat that the software for the municipal fleet is Fuel Force software. We have a question that I don't know if anyone on our panel can answer. It's, where would I go to find any results from the New Jersey food waste law, particularly in the North Jersey area where a recycling facility was initially available?
Robin, I can put in the chat who to get in touch with about that.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Okay, Steve, in response to your question about the additional resources, they said Simon's Siemens has a free version, Helios, Exchange, and AutoCase are 2 more.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. And yeah, Dan did put into the chat information on food waste. And Peter also put in that there's more information on fueling systems are available from Multiforce Systems Corporation, as well as their email address. And since we can't see if anybody's actually typing a question or a comment, and we have just a couple minutes left, if anybody is, if you could raise your hand while we can't unmute you, you could raise your hand to let us know that you're still actively typing something so we don't finish up when someone is trying to ask a question. Okay. Matt, if you could just type your question in.
I mean,
Okay.
if
Has DEP started to think about making up for the reversal of federal interest? I don't know if that's something we can actually comment on in this forum. Steve and Dan, do you have anything to?
I mean, I could say
add to
very
that?
broadly that, our bureau, had anticipated that things might go the way they seem to be going and, has done what we can to prepare for it, but that, clearly the future is unknown and what tools are and will remain available to the state are unknown. But I think that we're motivated and, doing everything we can to continue protecting the, health and well-being of the environment and people of the state of New Jersey.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So I'm going to turn everything back over to Stephen for some closing remarks.
Yeah, Peter, you had something else to say really quick?
One question for anybody, actually, on the topic that Dan was just talking about. Last year, there was the joint BPU and Sustainable Jersey Community Energy Planning Implementation Grants, Program Implementation Grants. There was talk last year about making them an annual cycle. I believe it was flow down of federal money. We should not expect that program to continue, or does anybody have any insight into that program going forward? Anybody on the call?
From what I understand, and analysis is changing rapidly, is that those funds were impacted. Like some of those funds are federal, so it's TBD on
Right.
what's to come.
Understand. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, great. So I'd like to thank the speakers for coming today and presenting all of their informative information for us. So thank you guys for coming and speaking to the public today. Thank you attendees for participating today and having such interesting questions. And then on that note, if anybody has any other question that we didn't get a chance to get to, or if anybody has anything that they'd like to share or that they'd like to participate in the future in terms of sustainability, climate change, anything involving environmental science of some sort, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is in the chat, like we said earlier. And we will also have the information from this event up on the website. And then we'll be able to post the presentation on there, the agenda, and the recording. So please go to our website at DEP's website, go to the Sustainability Bureau, and you'll see our information there. And we just got another question in. That's more of a comment. Thank you, Nick, for giving that comment. And can we come to chat thread, copy thread? Yeah. So the chat should stay up in Teams for a little bit, Peter. If you have access to that, you should have access to the chat. And then, like I said, for the recording, if anybody wants to rewatch the recording, find the presentations again, please feel free to go on the website. We'll try and post by the end of the week. If you don't see it there, if you have questions about the stuff that we went over today, please feel free to reach out to me. All right. So thank you guys for coming. We hope to see you again at future events. And it was nice speaking with you today.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.